Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the transport bay of the Ketharan Defense Station, her crisp blue uniform bearing insignia that none of the assembled aliens could identify. She was shorter than most of the species present, with graying hair and weathered features that spoke of decades spent in command positions. But there was something in her eyes, a depth of experience and quiet authority, that made even the towering Ketharan officers step back respectfully. Commander Zarathek approached cautiously, still struggling to reconcile this unremarkable-looking being with the devastating display of military power she had witnessed. Admiral Chen, on behalf of the Ketharan Collective and all 47 million souls on Ketha Prime, I thank you for your intervention. Admiral Chen nodded politely. Commander, I'm glad we could help. Though I suspect you have questions about who we are and where we came from. That would be appreciated, Zarathek admitted. Our databases show no record of Terran civilization. The Perseus arm is considered uninhabited by intelligent life. A slight smile crossed the Admiral's features. That's because you've been looking in the wrong places. And if I'm being honest, because we've worked very hard to remain hidden until now. She gestured toward the large viewing port, overlooking the debris field that had once been the Devourer fleet. May I suggest we sit? This story is longer than you might expect. Once they were seated around the briefing table, Admiral Chen began speaking in measured tones. The species you call Devourers were once known as the Predecessor Alliance. 3 million years ago, they ruled most of this galaxy. They were advanced, powerful, and absolutely convinced that survival required the elimination of all potential competitors. Zarathek felt her secondary heart skip a beat. 3 million years? But that would make them the original galactic civilization, yes. Every species in your collective, every world in your databases, every technological advancement you consider standard, they all developed in the shadow of the predecessors. Most galactic races never knew they existed because the predecessors were very thorough about eliminating species before they could develop spaceflight. But something stopped them, the Ketharan science officer observed. Admiral Chen's expression grew distant. Yes. Something did. A small, primitive species from a backwater world called Earth. A species that the predecessors dismissed as irrelevant animals barely out of their Stone Age. The silence in the room was absolute. You're saying, Zarathek said slowly, that your people fought the predecessors 3 million years ago? Fought them, defeated them, scattered them to the far reaches of the galaxy, and spent the next 3 million years making sure they could never threaten intelligent life again. Admiral Chen's voice carried no boast, only simple fact. What you encountered were the remnants. Degraded, desperate survivors, trying to rebuild their power by consuming younger civilizations. The implications were staggering. Zarathek tried to process what she was hearing. But that would mean Terrans, humans, are older than every known civilization. Not older. We just got a head start on certain types of development. Admiral Chen stood and moved to the viewing port. The predecessors made a fundamental mistake. They assumed that technological advancement was the only form of evolution that mattered. They never considered what might happen if a species evolved in other directions. Other directions? Adaptation. Resilience. The ability to survive in environments that should have been impossible. The predecessors were masters of their technology. But they had grown. Static, predictable. When they encountered humanity, they were facing something they hadn't seen in millions of years. A species that could change, learn, and adapt faster than their models could predict. She turned back to face the assembled aliens. The war lasted 800 years. Not because we were equally matched, but because humans are very, very difficult to kill completely. Every time the predecessors thought they had eliminated us, we found new ways to survive, new ways to fight back. And every generation, we got a little bit better at it. Commander Zarathek found her voice. The technology you use today, those weapons, those defenses, 3 million years of constant improvement, Admiral Chen confirmed. We've had a very long time to perfect our methods, and we've had a very good reason to stay ready. Which was? Because we knew they weren't all dead. We've been hunting the survivors across the galaxy for 3 million years, preventing them from rebuilding, protecting species like yours from discovery. What you experienced was actually a failure on our part. We missed a group that had grown larger than we realized. The tactical officer spoke up hesitantly. Admiral, if your people have been active for so long, why has no one encountered you before? Admiral Chen smiled, and for a moment she looked almost predatory. Who says no one has encountered us? Every species has legends about mysterious benefactors who appeared in times of crisis. Warriors who emerged from the void to fight impossible battles. Ships that appeared from nowhere to turn the tide of wars, then vanished without explanation. Zarathek's mind raced through Ketharon mythology. The Star Guardians, the Void Wanderers, ancient stories of salvation coming from the darkness between worlds when all hope was lost. You're saying those stories were real? Some of them. We've intervened in approximately 14,000 conflicts over the past 3 million years. Usually, we preferred to remain anonymous. Sometimes, we were remembered as legends or myths. Occasionally, as gods. She paused. We found that direct contact with pre-spaceflight civilizations often caused more problems than it solved. But you revealed yourselves to us, the science officer observed. The situation had escalated beyond our usual parameters, Admiral Chen explained. This group of predecessors had grown large enough to threaten multiple star systems simultaneously. We couldn't handle them discreetly without risking massive civilian casualties, and frankly, the galactic community's response to your distress calls made it clear that someone needed to remind them that isolationism has consequences. She moved back to her seat, her expression becoming more serious. Which brings us to why I'm here having this conversation instead of simply disappearing back into the void. Which is, because the game has changed. For 3 million years, we've been able to handle predecessor remnants quietly, in small groups. But they've been learning too. Evolving. The group that attacked you was using technology we hadn't seen before. They've found ways to communicate across vast distances, to coordinate their efforts. Admiral Chen activated a holographic display that showed a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red dots appeared throughout the spiral arms, each one pulsing slowly. These are confirmed predecessor positions. As of 6 months ago, we were tracking 47 separate groups. Now we're tracking over 300. They're organizing, rebuilding, and they're doing it faster than we can eliminate them. The red dots seem to pulse with malevolent life, scattered throughout known space like a disease. More importantly, the Admiral continued, they're targeting specific types of worlds now. Not just random destruction, but calculated strikes against civilizations with particular technological capabilities. They're looking for something. What could they be looking for? Zarathek asked. We believe they're trying to reconstruct their original empire. To do that, they need 3 things. Industrial capacity to build ships, technological knowledge to restore their advanced systems, and, she paused, population centers to convert. Convert? The predecessors weren't always the mindless destroyers you encountered. Originally, they absorbed conquered species into their collective structure. We think they're trying to rebuild their numbers by reverting to that strategy. The implications sent chills through every being in the room. The Devourers hadn't just been trying to destroy the Catharans. They had been trying to transform them into more Devourers. So what happens now? Zarathek asked. Admiral Chen stood and moved toward the transport bay doors. Now, humanity stops hiding. We've spent 3 million years as the galaxy's secret guardians. It's time to become its open protectors. She turned back to face them one last time. Commander, in approximately 6 standard hours, you're going to receive a communication from something called the Terran Hegemony. We'll be offering mutual defense pacts to every civilization in the galaxy. The age of isolated development is over. And if civilizations refuse, then they'll face the predecessors alone. As you nearly did. Admiral Chen's expression softened slightly. But I suspect most won't refuse. The universe is about to become a much more dangerous place, And your species just proved that even the most peaceful civilizations can show remarkable courage when their survival is threatened. As the Admiral moved toward her transport, Zarathek called out one final question. Admiral, why fight for 3 million years? Why not just find a safe corner of the galaxy and hide? Admiral Chen paused at the threshold and looked back with eyes that held the weight of ages. Because that's not what humans do, Commander. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. We learned that the only way to survive was to fight for each other, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves, and to never, ever give up. 3 million years ago, we had a choice. Hide and let the predecessors consume the galaxy, or stand up and fight for everyone's right to exist. She smiled one last time before stepping into her transport. We chose to fight, and we've been making that choice every day since. As the Terran transport departed, Commander Zarathek stood at the viewing port, watching it disappear among the stars. Around her, her crew began the long process of analyzing the data from the encounter, trying to understand the technology they had witnessed. But Zarathek found herself thinking about something else entirely. For 3 million years, while her people had developed art and philosophy in peace, while they had grown crystal gardens and built libraries of knowledge, there had been guardians in the darkness, warriors from an ancient world who had chosen to spend eternity fighting so that others could live in peace. The universe suddenly seemed both infinitely more dangerous and infinitely more wondrous than she had ever imagined. The Ketherans had always believed they lived in an age of enlightenment, but now she understood the truth. They lived in an age made possible by the sacrifice and vigilance of others. Soon, communications arrays throughout the galaxy would receive the same message, an offer of alliance from a species that had been fighting humanity's ancient enemy since before most worlds had even developed multicellular life. The choice would be simple. Stand together against the returning darkness, or face it alone. But as Zarathek watched the last of the Devourer wreckage drift past her window, she already knew what her people's answer would be. The humans had shown them something precious, that even in the face of impossible odds, courage and determination could triumph over any enemy. It was a lesson worth fighting for. In the depths of space, human ships continued their ancient patrol, now openly visible for the first time in 3 million years. The secret guardians had become public protectors, and the galaxy would never be the same. The age of humanity's hidden vigilance was over. The age of open alliance had begun,